Hey everybody, welcome to Patch Rundown 5.5. Before we get started, make sure that you have read the patch notes. I still don't know why people watch the show if they don't want to read the patch notes. We get a lot of stuff that we talk about here, but we don't cover every change. So if you want that, click somewhere around here for that. I have for you today a lineup that is pretty good on paper. We have King Jag the King, Jeevan Sidhu, and we have Riot Jag and Jatt, formerly of Team Dignitas.
Nice.
Very formerly. What is that, like 2011?
Yep.
As a no one will
Early
ever let that die.
2012.
Right. Ooh. Well,
Yeah.
we don't talk about that time. Anyways, guys, let's get right into it here. 5.4 hit. A lot of people were mad, and for good reason.
I was mad.
Yeah. We got one right here. So, Josh, let's go into it a little bit. Why are you mad?
As a jungler, I was mad.
I see.
I think there are multiple reasons to be mad, but we'll get into some of those later.
Right.
Main thing with the jungle, to me, was it was just yet another patch where junglers were nerfed without any real acceptable explanation why. Start of the year, we had strategic diversity. Junglers will be junglers. It's like, all right, I found a bunch of stuff that worked. You know, I can kill 3 camps, go back to base. Couldn't do that anymore because of another patch.
Right.
It's like, all right, you know, now I'm in a world where I can run other junglers because Ranger's Trailblazer helps me through, and then I can go fight people with Chilling Smite. And nope, not allowed to do that either. It felt like a lot of taking away from the jungler without any compensation or telling the jungler what they can do.
Yeah, I think like our goal is that the junglers can do all sorts of really powerful things, even in the early game. I think we're okay with them being potent in the early game, but simply they have to make trade-offs. And I think part of the levers we had in place for making those trade-offs were just too punishing. They were just tuned too high. The bar was too high for you to get through the jungle successfully and to have any actions you can take afterwards. So I think we've acknowledged that some of the goals were a little far-reaching.
So then let's take that and let's jump right into it. You say the bar was too high, right? Yeah. So we have changes in this patch that are lowering that bar, right? Or rather, you know, Gromp is doing less damage. Wolves are giving more gold. Raptors are doing less damage. So maybe Kha'Zix doesn't get eaten alive and die when he tries to do them, right? But what else do we have that is kind of answering a lot of Josh's concerns here, specifically when it comes to what are junglers supposed to do? How do I play these other junglers?
So I think long term we want to identify ways for junglers to succeed and support them. And for example, one of them is counter jungling. We don't really support that right now. And Poacher's Knife is barely an item that actually exists in our game. And a lot of the enchants are just not particularly interesting aside from Warrior. So we talk about strategic diversity and champion diversity in different contexts, right? And champion diversity where, yeah, you might see Jarvan, Vi, Rek'Sai, Lee Sin, doesn't really achieve the goal of strategic diversity, which is different ways of winning a game or being successful. They all pick Warrior enchant, they probably all pick Stalkers or sometimes Trailblazers. They all do really similar things. And in particular, Juggernaut seems to have really been left by the wayside. And we have a lot of plans for that for Cinderhulk.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I am looking forward to the next patch because it seems like the jungle has actually changed direction. I think it'll be a bit of a testing here. And we'll really see how powerful the jungle can be if we ever hit that tuning point, and then we'll have to kind of go back. So, like, being a jungler kind of sucks, and I think it will continue to suck for a little while as all of these things get changed, because it's not a super enjoyable experience to have to change the way you play almost every patch, right? Like it's a bit of a.
So do you think the frustrating part is the rapid change, or the fact that just the actions of going through the jungle don't tend to feel rewarding? Like, what is really the satisfaction point missing there?
Honestly, I feel like it's a bit of both. Changing every patch makes everything that is dissatisfying feel much worse.
Yeah, I think so. One of the things we're adding is Cinderhulk, right, which is the replacement for Juggernaut. So I think the way jungle has worked, particularly when it's really hard to clear and high damage, tanks just don't do anything. They don't get clear speed from the first few items. They get their tier 2 and then still get murdered by Razorbeaks, which in multiple ways we're tuning back. But this should be a way for them to feel powerful early before they've completed a lot of items. So we did a lot of things at once, right? We said early game jungle damage is lower. And that particularly helps, I think, a certain class of tank because they don't have great clear speed early and they don't get just pushed out of the jungle instantly. We changed Juggernaut so Cinderhulk has clear speed and also has scaling tankiness stats, right? It has percentage bonus health. So people that want to build defensive items and not kill people out of the jungle can be successful still. Whereas before it was basically like, get something that helps your clear speed, get Brutalizer, and then just gank continuously and be like the strongest character in the map for the first 20 minutes. So now we'd like to have alternate paths for success. And then finally, we've done some kit changes, where I think one of the more interesting ones is, say, Nautilus. Nautilus now basically has a really low cooldown stomp AoE move that I think has been really satisfying in playtests, right? Where before, I think Nautilus players felt like they didn't do much after the cooldowns were down.
Yeah.
And we want to
So
give
now
them...
his cooldowns are just never down.
Yeah, I mean,
So now you can never have this
Earth
problem.
mode.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just like stomp the hell out of it.
we're not about
Yeah.
windows of downtime.
Well, so there is a point that can be made about Cinderhulk, though, which is it's not 100% better, right? It's like
Sure.
it doesn't have CDR anymore, it doesn't have tenacity anymore, and there is a criticism amongst people on PvE right now that is, I'm losing out in kind of the early clears where I don't have this item, right? Like I don't have the little Cinder, I don't have the Cinderhulk,
Yeah.
right? So how are we addressing the people who are having hard times clearing the early jungle right now if I don't have 1,500
Because
gold,
it's the
2,000 gold to do
same
this?
type of problem early game, right? Like once you have the gold to complete this jungle item, maybe it's solving the problems. But up until that point, like the first 6 or 7 minutes of the game, I guess there's small improvements with the Gromp, Raptors, and Wolves doing slightly different things. But I think it's still going to be pretty painful, right?
Yeah, I think that's one of the concern points for us is we're trying to make the tier 2 level of tank junglers better, not necessarily from that item, but from the Gromp changes, the Wool changes, the Razorbeak changes. But there might still be a problem where their kits don't really give them enough clear speed. But I think it's a real concern for us that like not having CDR on the item and not clearing early might not be enough to satisfy what the tank junglers need, and we're willing to like make sure that's true, right? If this iteration doesn't hit it, we'll do it in the next. But that said, we feel like some of the stats on the item are really attractive for junglers. Getting a Sunfire almost for free seems like what a lot of players have wanted for a very long time. And the loss of CDR is going to hurt. The loss of tenacity, we'd argue, let's just add power budget to the item for tank specifically. Because if tenacity was on it, there might be a world where Jarvan and Vi found that item very attractive. Like they used to think Ancient Golem was the optimal purchase in Season 3 for certain points in time. So giving pure tanks like, say, Sejuani, not
Scion, Maokai, right?
right,
Like,
guys who are like really tanky dudes that rely on their cooldowns and therefore don't need to be like auto-attacking you and not being CC'd to be effective.
Right.
That lets us add power to that item as a result, right?
So switching gears for a little bit, last time you were on the show, we talked about Kassadin and Veigar specifically. Big changes that were coming in for them, and then, hey, if we went too far, we would pull back on that, right? So unlike Riftwalk, we did go too far last patch. So
Can I chime in?
yeah,
This is the other thing.
Yes, you can.
That I was mad about last patch. Basically, it felt a little bit like being a jungler if you were a Kassadin, Azir, or Veigar player last patch.
Right.
In you got all your tools stripped away from you, and everyone else was still doing the fun stuff.
Yeah.
In this case, like, what does Veigar do if he can't stun someone and one-shot him? Not much. What can Kassadin do if he can't jump far? Nothing. And the same with Azir. What does he do if his soldiers don't have enough auto attack range to hit people?
And talks about Shrima.
Yeah.
That's what he does.
Arise! That's all I would say. Really, though, why do you think that happened, that you guys went so far in those patches? We're coming back this patch a little bit, but kind of like, what is the root cause of those over nerfs?
Yeah, I think it's like a real phenomenon that you're talking about. This definitely happened. So like, for example, last rundown we said if Kassadin was in a bad spot, if we missed, we'd revisit him. Well, we clearly missed, right? I think we've had a tendency lately to have changes that are nerf heavy for several patches now. And one of the reasons is that we don't really define ways for characters to be successful. I think, like you just basically said it well, that when characters lose tools in a certain way and then we don't really compensate them sufficiently to succeed in other ways, they're just not really actual characters. So Kassadin was supposed to have similar sustained mobility, but reduced burst mobility, right? So we like the play pattern change, but we still wanted him to be this mobile guy, rift walking everywhere.
Right.
And we retuned that poorly.
Yeah, and instead it just felt like he just took more blinks and traveled less time. And so even though we changed the mana, it was like, oh, you'll be able to blink more, like you'll be able to sustain this. It was like, okay, well, he's still just not getting where he needs to be.
Right, we just didn't go hard enough. Veigar, similar thing. We wanted him to have ways to succeed, right? If you're mastering Veigar now, you're getting a lot more AP early. But we ultimately probably just didn't tune some of the stun numbers and AP ratios, or there's a lot of things we could look at. But basically, Veigar missed the mark in terms of tuning, I think, largely. Azir, to me, is just we didn't really define a way for that character to still succeed. I think there are problems with that champion that we couldn't really define a clear gameplay-based weakness, so it was hard for us to really see like a lot of gameplay strengths that we were okay with, and we ended up putting him in a bad spot.
Yeah.
So I think we've learned a lot of lessons from the last few patches where we say, okay, there are certain characters in our game that we just continuously tune down without any way to give them a chance to be successful in the game.
Right.
So you'll see that more, that we might be buffing some things you would never expect, right? That we've never buffed in the champions exist.
So is that kind of a change in mentality? Because definitely when people look at win rates on like public sites and they see someone below 40%, like that's to them olafing a champion, which is taking a champion, getting rid of all the things that he can do positively, and then it's like leaving him in the game. To be clear, like that's a mistake when that happens,
Right.
and it's something
It is
that
a
you guys
mistake.
are hoping to remedy, like in quick. It's not a design goal by any means to say we're going to put that champion in the dumpster until the rework team is able to finish the rework.
You're correct, it's not a goal. We've made some balance changes that have really reduced the power of a character excessively, and I think we've missed on them. But we're never intending to crush a character. To some extent, we have really limited gameplay that we think is unhealthy significantly, and I don't think that's something that's healthy. We want to keep pursuing solutions to make their unhealthy gameplay have counterplay, and sometimes those characters are just rework level away.
Sure.
But the mistake we've been making a lot is whenever a character that can be frustrating successful, we obliterate that case.
Yeah.
So Kassadin, when he is working, will be frustrating inevitably, right?
Right.
And any character in our game, if strong, will occasionally feel frustrating.
Yeah, and I mean, like the way that players see it, if you are paying attention to anything anyone says, right, is we'll say outwardly in patch notes like, oh, Veigar win too strong is frustrating, Cass win too strong is frustrating. People are like, well, Vi, Diddley, and Lysandra are strong right now.
And they're frustrating.
And they're frustrating, right?
Yeah.
I'm dying. So it's almost as if that doesn't necessarily ring true to people when they hear it, because they're like, oh, well, I haven't been in that world where Veigar is insane. You can't just tell me to imagine it and have me take that, right? So I mean, is that what we're thinking more of going forward?
Ultimately, any competitive game is going to have some frustration. For any champion to feel good, he or she probably has to feel overpowered in certain contexts, and therefore the other team might feel frustrated by them. So that shouldn't be the sort of metric by which we measure whether a character is fair or not. We can look at game health and see toxic gameplay and say, okay, this isn't really working right now, but we can't say this character is frustrating at all, therefore we have to nerf it. Even some of the characters that have some of the most lacking counterplay will still have aspects of their kit where you can fight against them, and we can give them strength in that area and make them have like fair gameplay experiences, even if overall they might be somewhat of a troubling character.
All right, guys, thank you for coming by and talking about the changes with me. For myself, Jeevan, Jagsadu, Joshua Jatt Leesman, and the rest of the crew here at the Patch Rundown, we'll see you next time when Machete costs 600 gold.
You son of a...